College classic? Did you say college classic? Well, sure you did. We're facing the reality of failure. Do you believe in failure? I know you don't. I know none of you do. Not as Americans, you don't. Because too many people are coming from other countries into our country. So there's just no way you can believe in failure. But if you think you've failed, if you think you've lost, if you think for some reason you just don't got it, I encourage you to pick up one of these books here by Dr. David Jeremiah and read. Because he teaches you that you really didn't fail. God's teaching you a lesson. He wants you to learn from failure, but that don't mean you're a failure. If you trust the Lord, greater things are to come from the things you've lost if you learn the reason why. And we trust God. I remember the first time I read Dr. David Jeremiah's devotional, I said, this stinks. I even had the audacity to write to him and tell him it stinks. I know you could do better than that. You're a doctor. Come on. You can do better than this. And then he let me have it. He really let me have it. I didn't really want to read any more of his stuff after that. I just stopped reading them. Then one day I said, oh, he's still sending me this stuff. And I read it, and it was really good. I said, this ain't the same guy. It's not the same guy. I read this book he sent me for free. I said, oh, that's really good. It was like a theologian in my back pocket. And I pulled it out, and there it was. And I just started reading, and it's really good. This man's really educated. He's really, really good. And then I had to apologize. Tell him, Dr. David Jeremiah, I'm so sorry. This is really delicious. See, I was used to reading the Table Talk with R.C. Sproul. I was used to getting all kinds of really, really educational stuff. TBN's Dr. Paul Crouch Sr. Even some of the books that I have, the Omega Code, the codes embedded, and all that stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, wow. And then he hit me right in the jaw. Bam! I said, oh, what'd you hit me for? He says, well, read this one. Okay. Dr. David Jeremiah, guys. Paul introduces the likelihood of failure in his own life in an interesting way. He talks about the treasure we have in our earthen vessels. Well, what does he mean, earthen vessels? Come on, guys. The treasure is the gospel, the hidden gospel. You gotta seek it. I didn't see it in the doctor. I had to study a little more. I was like, but I found it. I found the good stuff. Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Okay, so what now? The treasure is the gospel, right? The earthen vessels are frail and fragile human bodies. God has entrusted the priceless treasures of his gospel to be kept safe in the bodies of human beings, and we'll find it in each other, right? I remember Pope said that, are you seeking God? You'll find it in man or human. Okay, so what happens to human bodies? They are hard-pressed. Brother Tony says hard-pressed, shaken up, and overflowing, right? Well, united we can. Okay, Victory Outreach. So what happens to the human bodies? They are hard-pressed, perplexed, persecuted, stuck down, but never totally defeated. Even Christ beat down beyond any comparison. And yet, Christ was with him. Although never knocked out, we are knocked down continually in life. In other words, we fail a lot. And the fact of failure is factored into our humanity. It comes with the package. In a book titled The Incomplete Book of Failures, author Stephen Pyle lists some of the failures associated with people you thought always did everything successfully. And it knocks you out. You say to myself, oh, I thought he was a genius. I didn't know he he lost so much. Strange. Okay. An expert said of a famous football coach, Vince Lombardi, he possesses minimal football knowledge, lacks motivation. Beethoven handled the violin awkwardly and preferred playing his own compositions instead of improving his technique. His teacher called him hopeless as a composer. Walt Disney was fired by a newspaper editor for lack of ideas. He went bankrupt several times before he built Disneyland. Thomas Edison's teacher said he was too stupid to learn anything. Oh my God. I'm sorry. No. God said this is junk when he read the person. No, he didn't say that. He just was angry because he expected more. But no, so now, yeah. Well, yeah. 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 They used to make fun of my guitar playing. Oh, you know what was a good one too is Motley Crue, the lead guitarist from Motley Crue, Nicky Sixx and Mick Mars, both ridiculed. And then later on, they were on Bam Magazine, Guitar Hero, and all those other guys. Well, you take that up with them. But Thomas Edison's teacher said he was too stupid to learn anything. Albert Einstein did not speak until he was 4 years old and couldn't read until he was 7. His teacher described him as mentally slow, unsociable, and adrift forever in his foolish dreams. He was expelled and refused admittance to the Zurich Polytechnic School, and F.W. Woolworth's employers, Woolworth. Woolworths and Woolworth employers at the dry goods store where Gary Woodworth he worked and said he didn't have enough sense to wait on the customers. Henry Ford failed and went broke 5 times before he finally succeeded. Winston Churchill failed the 6th grade. He did not become Prime Minister of England until he was 62, and only after a lifetime of setbacks and failures. Wow. There are many more examples which could be cited. It is true that many people who succeed significantly have a string of failures somewhere in their past. How about Yngwie Malmsteen? You think he ever failed anywhere in music? Eddie Van Halen, right? These guys. Neil Peart, Tommy Lee, Gerhardt, that race car driver. You think they ever failed at something? There are many more examples which could be cited. It is true that many people who succeed significantly have a string of failures somewhere in their past. Think about it. God is not surprised by our failure. Indeed, he expects it because he knows who we are. Psalm 103, 13-14. We saw in our last lesson that the disciples failed to stay awake and watch and pray with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus' conclusion was, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Shaka Khan, Shaka Khan, I'm Shaka Khan. I love you, Shaka Khan. I love you, Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan, I'm Shaka. I love you, Shaka Khan. I love you, Shaka. So, Matthew 26:41, and God knows our propensity to fail, and so understands our requests when we come to him in times of failure. Hebrews 4:15-16. So the famous Scottish preacher Alexander White describes spiritual growth like this. The spiritual growth is the saints falling down and getting up, falling down and getting up, falling down and getting up, all the way to heaven. Are you know any drug addicts that fit this criteria? And some buddy on the sideline calling him a drug addict, making sure he falls down so he can get back up? Who do you think is going to heaven? If you're like me, you can identify with that. College Classic Campus Hits, TcYbarra. That was a good one. Very tasty, Dr. David Jeremiah. Very, very, very tasty. Hallelujah.